let's talk about Corduroy by Adrian Bell. So this is a fictionalised autobiography. These events in these books, there's a trilogy actually, this was the first, and he wrote later books as well. They're true stories, but he has sort of anonymised the local details, and the names have been changed, and there's been sort of organisation of the material. I think truthful organisation, but kind of it's been organised as if it's trying to reach a novelistic audience. And historically, in 1920, Adrian Bell, who was the son of a newspaper editor, he was the father of other media figures, including the journalist and MP Martin Bell. He himself ended up inventing the Telegraph crossword or something, I think, or at least being the first editor of the Telegraph crossword. So he, in 1920, was sent by his father, instead of going to university, because his father thought that was a terribly soft thing to do, given that he should go out there and really get to know the country and earn a living. He was sent to be an apprentice farmer. Corduroy is after the corduroy trousers preferred by the hard-working farmers of Suffolk in the 1920s. And this is the story. Corduroy is the story of his first year, and Silverley and the Cherry Tree are the other two entries in the core rural trilogy, it's called. And this edition, for what it's worth, was a special one, published. It's a single edition in 1948 with illustrations by Arnold Becker. There's a sample illustration. They're very beautiful, just interspersed through. But more relevantly for most people, there is a fairly cheap print-on-demand version from Faber, so it's not a bad print-on-demand, available at Amazon and elsewhere. So at some level, you need to be interested in the topic to really get the book and enjoy the book, or at least you have to become interested. It's about a city boy converted to agricultural life and learning to love the land. I think those are really interesting themes. Not everyone will, but Bell makes it easy through his writing style. His writing style is the first thing I'll say. It's just he's a very good writer, sometimes very beautiful. Here's just talking about one of Mr. Colville, his hero, his employer, his tutor, one of Mr. Colville's brothers, Horace. Horace was a kind of Will Wimble. His interest was in observing the wild life of the fields. He knew where the foxes had their lairs, what coverts the pheasants haunted, and which way the partridges in any particular field were apt to fly when driven. Though no horseman, he was an invaluable help to the huntsman when the hounds ran that way. At the sound of a horn, he was immediately on the alert, and it was likely that he saw the fox and noted its line. Many a time he had hallooed the hunt from a check and put them on the scent again. He was popular among them, for when they drew the coverts to the neighbourhood, they were nearly always sure of an immediate find, since Horace knew where the fox lay close. He might have forsaken his lair in the sandpit. Horace had found him in a hollow tree. So in some senses a fairly easy style, certainly easy reading, but with a sort of certain rhythm and sense that is quite rhythmic, quite musical, and subtly beautiful. Sometimes there are more explicitly purple passages with so a small-faced man with glittering blue eyes and grizzled white hair, altogether like a bright frosty morning, dressed in immaculate pink, cried out, "Well, Colville, where shall we find today?" He certainly has good descriptive language too, but in general, easy to read and subtly beautiful throughout, and musical and lulling you into the world. And the cast of characters is really good, particularly his great hero and mentor, Mr. Colville, who is ever wise about the land. He's always, I think he has a deep interest in human nature, and the connection of human nature to the land is a common theme, and he has deep sympathy for the people he lived amongst through those years, through the many decades he was on the land. And there is a sermon he wants to preach, and he isn't shy about it. He loves the land, he loves the people of the land. He loves the old man-powered ways of doing things. He used a horse and plough into the 1940s and 50s. He loves the close-knit rural communities, even for their flaws. He understands where their bigotries and smallnesses can come from and has sympathy for those too. and he is on the side of the farmer in the context of the rural depression of the 20s. In a sense, this isn't even ideological. If ideological means a set list of beliefs and paradigms that help us understand the universe or whatever else, it's less an ideological sermon as a list of loves. It's more like a love poem where you're saying, look at how wonderful this person I love is. And Bell uses his beautiful prose to sing of them. I think it's a beautiful book. You can read it more or less as fiction, and you can come away knowing about the characters and their stories and the way that Adrian learns to be a farmer, to live amongst them. Or you can see it as, and this is equally an accurate way of seeing it, as a real autobiography, talking about one man's re-enchantment with the land and his growing up via engaging in agriculture in a very different era to our own. So I recommend it, and I recommend the sequels too. If you have read it, tell me what you thought in the comments, or recommend other good sort of fictionalised biography and things like that. Till next time.